Hi, Rena. Hi, Martens.
Hi, Terry. How are you? I'm
Good.
Rena Sans Petrucci of Meanstreak.
And I'm Martens Myung of Meanstreak.
Okay, great, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show. You guys did my first show of this year. This is my fourth season. Let's go back to the beginning. So, where did you guys both grow up?
I grew up in Rockland County, New York, which is kind of upstate, but a half an hour out of the city, in a town called New City originally, and then in Suffern. I was pretty much there till I was 14. I went to California for a few years and came back at 18. Met Marlene, who lived in that same area, and Lisa.
Up in Long Island, I still have the accent, New Yorker. Basically, I traveled all over on Long Island, New York.
Yeah, so I'm on the South Shore of Long Island.
Okay, I lived in Bayshore for a while, but I grew up in Huntington area.
Not far from me.
And I now live in Long Island, so I'm not too far from you.
Do you like, Westchester, Yonkers area, upstate more, or the island more?
I just want to make a correction because Wikipedia for years said we were from Westchester, but we were from Rockland County, which is across the other side of the Tappan Zee Bridge. But I love Long Island. I've been here for a really long time. Let's see. I moved here when my 28-year-old twins were probably a year old. I've been out here at least 27 years. I love it out here. It's great, aside from the traffic.
So I have to ask both of you, when you guys were growing up in your families, was your family musically inclined? Did that start to seep into what you guys became from your family, or was it from the outside?
I'll let Rena answer that one because my family, there was no music whatsoever other than the radio blasting all day. My mom listened to the radio. They were not into anything musical, me being into music at all.
Yes, my father was actually a jazz musician who played piano, and when he was younger played like Stan Getz and was totally into music. And my mom also played violin. They were very, we were listening to music, classical music, jazz music, everything from Sarah Vaughan to Joe Pass to Oscar Peterson. And so there was always that music in the house. Probably why I turned to rock music and started playing heavy metal. I think I did to piss him off at some point, but...
So, if you don't mind me asking, at what point did you guys start to take an interest in metal? Because, like I mentioned before we started, I remember listening, my father would play the radio, obviously. Remember, my first band I ever liked was Bachman Turner Overdrive. So you're talking like Taking Care of Business, Let It Ride, like the early 70s. And then my neighbor was older than me, and one day he sold a bunch of records. I went over there, and I didn't have a lot of money or anything, but he was selling them really cheap. And it ended up being the first Black Sabbath album and Led Zeppelin. And so I started that heavy metal thing from really the early 70s. What about you guys? How did it happen, hard rock and metal?
For me, I probably started listening to Aerosmith when I was younger. Not metal, but that was gifted to me by a relative. And then little by little, once I was in high school, basically everything was going on. You had new wave and metal, and you kind of listened to everything, and whole scene, and pretty much friends who listened to things like Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin. That's how I got turned on to all of those bands that I had never even heard of before. And it just progressed there.
When I was very young, probably 5 years old, I had a babysitter that across the street there was a house, and incidentally they had 9 kids in the family, and I met the girl that lived there and we ended up becoming best friends at a young age. Her older brother was playing Led Zeppelin, and I remember the song was Heartbreaker, and I was just so like, wow, what is that? I was so young, I didn't even know why I liked it. I always liked Zeppelin. I remember being in 6th grade, my sister gave me like a Stairway to Heaven album for my birthday. I liked records when I was little. I also liked Donny Osmond when I was little, but I liked that it kind of started there, and then I moved from my town, which was New City, to Suffern when I was just going into middle school, and I met this girl, Bobby. I went to her house, and she put on Kiss and Black Sabbath, and I didn't know who they were at that point. I was listening to Zeppelin and other stuff, and it kind of started there. But there was a big scene of progressive rock when I was in high school, like middle school and high school, where there were always like Yes and Kansas and Gentle Giant and all these other things. I kind of listened to all that stuff too, but I always leaned toward the heavier stuff. I always liked it. To make a long story short, I remember I was friends with Marlene's boyfriend before I met Marlene from, just my sister somehow knew people he played in a band with. I was riding in the car with him one day and he put on Judas Priest, and I was just like, he's like, you have to hear this, and I'm like, what is this? This is crazy. I love this, That was probably one of the moments. But meeting Marlene she was the one that really turned me on to metal because she wanted to start a band. And she started teaching me, like, she was playing guitar, and she started teaching me, like, Breaking the Law and Heading Out to the Highway and all those songs. Like, we're like, we have to start a band. So, that's kind of, and then from then on, we were just like, we would go to Tower Records in the city. Do you remember, Lee? When an album would come out, I remember the Queensryche EP came out, and we would go to the city and, like, just get the the hardcover record and be like, oh my God, I gotta want to listen to this.
It's interesting you bring up the Queensryche because, being from Seattle, they're from Seattle. I remember, I don't know about here on the East Coast, but in Seattle, we used to have a radio station called KISW. And there was another one called KZOK. But KSW would have one night a week. They'd have what they call Metal Hour. And this was probably started, I'm going to say like 80. Bands like Saxon and Iron Maiden and the first Def Leppard album. They would start playing that stuff. And then they play a lot of bands you never even heard of. That would cause me and my friends go down. We had two Tower Records in Seattle. One was where the University of Washington is, and the other was in downtown Seattle by the Space Needle. We would go down there and we would check out all these albums that we heard on Metal Hour. But I remember when Queensryche released the EP, they played, I don't know if it was Lady Wore Black or Queen of the Reich, but they played that, and it must have been the first time because they're local. And Jeff Tate's voice and all those drums, I was like, holy crap, we were hooked.
Same. And we did a lot of this as a band. Like all the Iron Maiden albums were coming out. And I remember when Screaming for Vengeance came out, I put it on. We're like, what is happening right now?
I love it.
It was like groundbreaking. Like it just, and I even remember listening to like Van Halen too. When I was hearing like the first Van Halen album and getting the same response. It was like, you're hearing something it never happened before. Amazing,
Not just guitar, but like you hear Steve Harris in Maiden, that bass that's like nonstop. It's crazy, right? Later with Metallica, with Cliff and all those guys. But I feel like I was really lucky to live through that time where you could go to a record store and you could actually meet people flipping through albums. You could spend hours. I have this certain nostalgia for just sitting there discovering bands you never even heard. You're looking at the title, the names of the song, who produced it.
Yeah, totally. I agree with you. I think it was like, I feel like we were so lucky to experience that. I have kids that are young adults now, and it's like this, all the music that's out is sort of just kind of rehashed and it keeps coming back out. And there have been some things that came out that were kind of new, but it's kind of just like more and more of the same. It seemed like we were at the beginning of it. So we used to be able to go out and see. I remember seeing Metallica in Staten Island. Do you remember that, Lise? We went to some bar in Staten Island, so Twisted Sister and Metallica play. It's like, and we were there for Twisted Sister. That's the funny part. Followed them around, and we didn't know who Metallica was at the time. We're like, oh my God, these guys, what is this?
Speaking of Metallica, and of course, I'm not the first person to ever listen to him. I do remember one of our trips to the University of Washington. Metallica album had just come out, and so had Raven, All for One. And so I remember it was on the second level of that store, and I remember flipping, and I'm being honest, it was the first album. I'd never heard them. They'd never even played on the radio that I'd heard. My friends didn't know who they were. And I said, what do you guys think of this album? And they said, well, I like the way the M goes like this down and the A. And they're like, what record label is it? So we flip it over, it says Megaforce Records. And we said, like, oh, that's the same label as, Raven and Manowar. And then they're like, what's the song titles? Phantom Lord, Pulling Teeth, Seek and Destroy. I like, you know what? I'll buy it. I'll take a chance on it. I did the same thing with the first Motley Crue. I'd never heard that. And I know it's not the same heaviness of Metallica.
No, but they were cool.
Look at it and I'm like, okay, this guy's crotch, right? Which I'm not so much into, but let me flip it over. It had pentagrams and skulls. So I decided to buy it and I actually liked it. It was cool, right?
It was totally cool. In fact, we tried to, in the early days, we played a lot of covers when we were first starting, and we tried to learn Looks That Kill, and not knowing what tuning to E flat was or whatever they did, they tuned down somehow. And Marlene and I were just struggling. Our hands were going all over the guitar, like we could play it, but it's so hard. What is this? And then, we figured out, In
regards to all those bands back then, for both of you, for bass and guitar, who are the guitarists that impacted you each and bassists individually? The ones that you were like, wow, I wish I could be able to do that, or that just blew you away. Who are some of those guitarists and bassists?
Wow, originally for me, before the metal stuff, it was Geddy Lee, of course, and Chris Squire, because as Rena mentioned earlier, you had a lot of the prog stuff. But with me, all the music was pretty much the same. It was either that or something heavy. I loved it all. And after that, Steve Harris, all the other bands that came out, it was everything all mixed together pretty much. But little by little, more and more of the heavier stuff started getting exposed to it.
We specifically, as a band, we had two guitar players, so we would often, like, we loved Iron Maiden, we loved Judas Priest. I would kind of always take on I loved Adrian Smith out of them, and Marlene would sort of lean more towards Dave Murray. In the Judas Priest stuff, I would play the Glenn Tipton stuff, and, she would do the KK stuff. So we kind of had our leanings, and we both always agreed on which way we were going to go with things. I loved those guys. I also liked Steve Morse back then. I found him before I even met John and his shred playing. I had this, I probably still have it somewhere over here. It was a cassette tape of how to speed picking, like playing alternate picking, and so I liked him too, and like I had heard the Dregs and stuff like that. There was like a lot of prog influence in things too, so a lot of great guitar players there. And I also love like Joe Satriani when he came along, like Surfing with the Alien like changed my life also, like this instrumental music, so I kind of tend to lean towards the guys, and I love like Joe Walsh and stuff like that. I mean, even though I love metal, I still like playing like an Eagles solo, or like I love the way these guys play, the Allman Brothers and all that. So many great, very unique and individual guitar players back then that, when they played, you knew it was them.
You're right. And I think that was part of the charm for probably all of us. Randy Rhoads, Eddie Van Halen, George Lynch, Jakey Lee, Warren DeMartini. I mean, all these guys, it was just,
I used to love Jakey Lee. Yeah. Like forgetting.
it was just Randy Rhoads. I mean, it was
Randy
crazy.
Rhoads, yeah.
Rick Emmett and Triumph, right?
Rick Emmett. The reason I think I started playing guitar was because I had a crush on Rick Emmett. And I used to work in this record store called Harmony Hut, and he came to the store to do a guest appearance, and I was like, he had a studio in Canada at the time. Like, we have to record in the studio. I think I practiced a lot because of that.
Did you guys learn to play your instrument on your own, or did you take lessons?
I took lessons. Originally, I wanted to play bass because I had heard a Led Zeppelin song. I still don't remember what it was. The bass was very prominent, and I had said, "Oh my God, what is that?" And my friend's brother said, "Oh, that's the bass." And then the brain just said, "Okay, that's what you have to do." I wanted to take lessons and couldn't find a bass teacher. My mother found a guitar teacher who insisted I had to play guitar. So I played guitar for a couple of months and said, "No, I want to play bass. Enough already." So he sold me an old Sam Ash bass that he had, which I still have. I started playing bass from there, and on and off I took lessons from different people here and there. Some of them were really good players, but they weren't really good teachers. So a lot of it was really just playing songs mostly.
I kind of started, I had an older brother and sister, and they played acoustic guitars and stuff. So there was always one around the house. I always would pick it up. But there was a class I had in my middle school where it was like a guitar class where you could take it as an elective. And I took it with my friend Mindy, and we learned like Guantanamera and some House of the Rising Sun and some other songs. It kind of got me started. And then I really did a lot by ear. Then when I moved to California for a little while, and I remember trying to figure out like a Farewell to Kings, like the classical part in the beginning. And I was getting it, but I wasn't exactly playing it technically right. And so when I came back, my dad, who I told you was a jazz musician, was like, you should take lessons, but I want you to take classical because it would really give you a good basis for understanding music and everything. So I did that for probably a year, and the teacher would teach me half blues and half classical, and I loved it. I still love classical guitar. But then I met Marlene, and a couple of lessons in, the teacher said to me, "You're wasting your money and my time." Next thing you know, we had the band together, and that was the end of my lessons. I have over time, like still now, I still do occasionally take lessons from people and do challenges. And I've actually gone on a lot of certificates at Berkeley. I'm on a music theory certificate now. I did the advanced guitar certificate. So it's like it's an online program of guitar proficiency type of stuff. So it is like lessons.
Don't you guys both feel from even what you're saying, Rena, you should never stop learning? Because if you think you mastered something, like I'm a filmmaker, right? So I'm mostly self-taught, but I did go to NYU and I did study acting for a year so I could understand actors. And I think it's important that directors, filmmakers do that. You shouldn't stop because we don't know everything, right?
Right. I feel like you just have to keep growing no matter how you go about doing it, whether it's like working on new projects or taking a class here and there. At least for me, I need the motivation too, because life takes over and you have a million things to do. You don't always make it the priority, even though every time I sit down and pick up my guitar, I just love it. I was listening, I forgot who I was listening to, but somebody was saying, just pick up your guitar every day, even if it's for a few minutes, just pick it up. And I started doing that, and it really leads me into being really much more disciplined about staying on top of things. Because like we're not on tour right now, we're not in the studio, so like I'll noodle around. And then I got a call from the girls in Judas Priestess to do a gig, and when I started playing that stuff again, my fingers were falling off. They were like, the nails were separating. I had no calluses. My fingers hurt.
Oh, man.
Playing chords. I'm like playing 2-5-1 progressions here, and like playing that stuff.
I have to ask you both this. Obviously, your husbands are both really amazing at what they both do, bass and guitar. Do they ever offer to teach you anything that they know? Or do you even want to hear it from your husbands?
I would would love it. What about you, Lise?
I would love it. His thing is not teaching. He's not someone who gives advice. His is more if it has to come from within, and everybody has their own thing. Learning the basics is great. From there, you just kind of have to find your own path. Is more of what he would say. It's just one of those things. Like everybody has their own style already. I could never. I could try, but I could never play like him. I mean, he's more of a like John Entwistle with 3 fingers, 2-finger person. I can play with a pick. I prefer not to. I play with my fingers. I would take any advice I would get, but it's just not one of those things.
In my case, John does help me a lot with a lot of things, but it's kind of like we're a married couple. Like it's not the first thing I do is to go bother him with stuff. Like if I'm struggling with a technique or something, like for instance, when I did 2 of his guitar camps as a guest instructor, I'll consult with him on like, how to put my lesson plan together. Does he think this is a good idea that I teach this, that, and the other thing? And, he'll give me feedback that way, or I'll play when we did the Blood Moon EP, I recorded my own solos at home and, I'd send them to him. Like, what do you think? Is it a little too sloppy? Should I redo it? That kind of thing. And he's always been great. He's very, very busy. And so is John Myung. Like when they come home, we want to catch up on our shows and make a steak or whatever, it's the last thing we do is like sit down and jam. Occasionally, he'll have a glass of bourbon. I'll have a glass of wine. Next, we're doing like a Fleetwood Mac sing along. Other than that, might be the Pretenders sometimes.
When you've done those guitar camps with John and the other people that are there, and I haven't been to any of them, but I've seen some stuff online. How is that as a guitar player, knowing you've got all these amazing players, probably the people they're coming to learn are probably amazing players. Is that intimidating at all? Or do you feel
you really think it would be? But here's the thing. It's like the camp is like a family and they're so happy to be there and happy to just have a piece of your time. And everybody at any level of guitar, everybody plays different styles and they have different things to offer. And like Lisa was saying, just because somebody's really fantastic doesn't mean they're that good necessarily at teaching it. So people who accept the roles to do this are usually people who do teach and they kind of have done clinics or they have done things, but some of them don't, and it's really cute to see them come in and they have no idea what they're going to do and they're having a panic attack when meanwhile it's like cover of Guitar World magazine, but they're like, oh my god, what am I going to teach? So they all feel the same way. Like they're all going, well, I got to teach at John Petrucci's camp. For me, it's a little different. It's like I've been around that greatness, and so has Lisa. We've watched them with their whole entire careers, and it's like we're so proud of them and like how amazing they are and everything. But we're doing our own thing, and we were doing it long before they came along. Keep forging forward with it. In some ways, yes. In some ways, they're so accepting. Have you all there? They're like so happy. I didn't think anybody would show up for my classes because in this last camp, it was so ridiculous that I was like, they were having like 7 breakout classes at a time or 8. And it was like Guthrie Govan. I don't know if this is the lineup, but it would have been like Guthrie Govan, Laura Basilio. Who's going to come to my room? Do I have to do this? Because I don't want to be sitting there by myself. And then I'm like thinking, all right, if I'm sitting there by myself and nobody comes, I'll just practice the music I have to play, because I get up and do jams with like John and whoever his band is. And like this one I just took the backing tracks for our stuff and I performed it live with just me playing, but it had the vocals on it. So, and a lot of people do that. They bring in tapes because they can't afford to bring their whole bands in. It is intimidating, but it's such a fun environment and people like love it. Then people came to my class. I was like, hi. But I have a lot of stuff, like the way I approach things is a little different too. I had a lot of materials and things to work on. We were doing warm-up. They want to get to John too. So like John doesn't do the private breakout classes at that. They get to meet him and take pictures with him and everything, but it's kind of cool because they feel like they're...
I got to add this. My friend treated me to Metallica's No Repeat weekend this past summer. So I was at the first show of the U.S. tour of Metallica's M72 tour. You had Mammoth, Pantera, and Metallica first night, MetLife Stadium. 2 days later, Five Finger Death Punch and Ice Nine Kills, and they played none of the same songs. The thing I was so proud of when I was at that show, and there's probably 90,000 people both nights. It was crazy. And the weather was perfect.
Yeah.
First week of August. But I think it relates to hopefully the crowd you were talking about of musicians there, because a lot of them, I didn't see anyone shove anybody, nobody cut in front of anybody. When people are going up the stairs, I saw big guys with tattoos letting each other pass. I actually wrote a Facebook post the next day and I said, I'm so proud of the metal community because they were so giving. And even maybe loving with each other. There was no fights. People were drinking and stuff. I saw none of that. And I said, the fact that Metallica, which is a thrash band, has 90,000 people a night and you see no violence. And I actually saw people like going out of the way. Oh, go ahead. Please go ahead. It was so great because I just think our audience doesn't get that. Our family of music loving, we're good people, right?
It's true. No, it's definitely true. And I feel like music is the one thing that unites everybody. You know, people could come from different backgrounds, different political affiliations, different religions and everything. But when Metallica gets on stage, everybody's there from every country and people are flying in and we're all one. Like, that's the way I see it. And by the way, Zach was actually at the camp in August, had to fly home the night before the show he was doing there, because originally he was supposed to leave in the morning and there was some weather coming in, but he did a quick appearance at the show and he was totally cool. People were flipping out over him, you know?
How did Meanstreak, I know you kind of said it, but how did it come together to get really specific for those who don't know? Like, I don't even actually know. Who started the band? I guess, are you kind of saying it was Marlene? Was she the one who recruited you and then you guys recruited Martens? And then, if you don't mind, mention the other ladies who are not here, so whoever's watching the show will know.
Marlene and Rena knew each other, she said, had met each other and started working, getting a band together. And from what I understand, you guys had a hard time finding a drummer at first because there were no drummers locally. There's only so many female musicians. And Tina, you guys knew through other friends, knew of her as far as I know. So they had a singer, so they had Tina. They had a drummer, and they had another bass player at the time. Things just weren't working out, so they put out an ad in the Aquarian Weekly, and the band I was in wasn't working out. It was probably my first time I ever went to Lemoore in Brooklyn with someone I was dating at the time. He's like, oh, here, pick up the Aquarian Weekly. Let's look through here. And when I got home, I was like, oh my God, there's an ad. The next day I called her. I persisted. I was coming. When are you having rehearsal again? And they're like, today. I go, well, I'll be there. And they're like, well, where do you live? I'm like, well, I'm on Long Island. And she was like, well, we're in Rockland County. 2 bridges later, getting lost in Harlem, which I had no... Hi, I'm here.
So Marlene, we were rehearsing in Marlene's garage, and we're standing at the top of the driveway waiting for her to get there. She gets out of the car, and she comes walking up the driveway, and she looked so cool and so beautiful. And she had this, I think you had, if I remember correctly, you were in black parachute pants and a red leather jacket, and your hair was just really cool and spiked out. And me and Marlene looked at each other like, she's in. We didn't hear her play yet.
Whole funky outfit on. I think I had a red and black leopard print long t-shirt, if I remember correctly.
Is that what it was? I remember seeing red.
But from there down the road, our original drummer really was getting to the point where she wasn't wanting to do a lot of things or shows that we were doing, and we had a really big show opportunity. So at that point, we wound up with our current and drummer for the longest time, the Owl.
Was there any female metal or rock band that you gals modeled yourself after, or was it just the bands you've already mentioned, like Priest and Maiden and those bands?
In the beginning, we tried dressing like Maiden. Then we kind of tried dressing almost like Pat Benatar. And after that, we started dressing like Anthrax, tight jeans, stretchy jeans, wrestling shoes and stuff like that. And just progressed from there, as the scene changed, we just kind of, went along with that. Back in those days, I didn't even know who the Runaways were. I'd never, I knew who Joe Jeanette was, but I didn't even know before that there was a girl band. And other than Bangles or the Go-Go's, I didn't know any heavy bands. I didn't know who Rita Ford was or anything. You guys might have, but...
I like Girl School, actually, and the first solo I ever taught myself and learned was from Hit and Run. And I was so proud of myself. I was like, wow, look, I'm actually playing this, I did like them a lot, but when we started playing together, it was all the same metal that was out, and there were some good bands locally that we'd go to see, like Phantom Blue, and there were some local bands that we played with a few times.
They were more, I'd say rock, most of these bands.
So here's a question I have to ask, and I'm sure maybe the ladies and the men that are watching this show will want to know this. As a female heavy metal thrash band like yourselves, is there a tug of war between gotta look pretty, guys want you to look sexy, or you want to look tough, that you're fighters? Is there that tug of war between the way you dress and do your makeup, or do you just do what you want to do?
I'd say we just do what we want to do at this point, most definitely. Back in the day when we started, we had a lot of different ideas over the years and realized what worked and what didn't. I think one show we did, when we did the whole bodysuit and tights and boots, somebody shoved money, I believe, in Marlene's boot while we were
And the comments were flying. They're like, that bass has some bottom.
Let's just, dress, like we would, dress cool, dress like the guys.
So nowadays, I want to try to look pretty, but I just look tough, so it's working for the band.
when I was in high school in the early 80s, because I graduated 84, the British, new wave of British heavy metal kind of coming through at that time. And then you had the inception of thrash, and then you had the LA sunset bands like Dokken and Quiet Riot and all that. We had LPs, and then you had cassettes, eventually CDs at the end of the 80s. But I just look back for you guys, and you guys tell me a couple of your stories maybe. I remember the first concert I ever went to, Fastway, Saxon, and Iron Maiden. It was on their Peace of Mind tour, 83. And then shortly after that, I saw Great White on their first album when they're heavier with Judas Priest on the Defenders of the Faith tour. Then I saw, this was a strange concert. On the West Coast, I don't know about you guys here in the East, but we would get like these like tapes, what do they call it, tape trading, where you get someone have a tape and they'd make you a cassette. Rat had come out with their EP, not even out of the cellar. We're like, this is so cool with Sweet Cheater and You Think You're Tough. So they were coming to Seattle at the Paramount. So me and my friends go to the Paramount and we're going to see Rat. And when we get there, there's a sign and it says Rat opening. I'm like, what? They're opening? I thought they'd be headline for Bon Jovi. Now this is a true story. I'd never even heard Bon Jovi's name because remember, we're on the West Coast. And I didn't even know how to say it. I go, what the hell is Bon Jovi? And some guy goes, they're from Jersey. And I'm like, they're gonna suck. You know, that was, it was from the West Coast. They're gonna suck. And so we saw Rat open up and they played well. You know, Robin Crosby and DeMartini together. And then John came on with Richie. Holy shit, I'd never heard any of this. So I was blown away. At one point, John actually, remember he was young, like maybe 22. Nobody knew who he was. At one point, he looked out to all the audience. He said, I bet I can make you girls try to take a piece of my heart. And I'm just sitting there like, what's he gonna do? He jumps out because remember, he wasn't a star. He did almost, not a stage dive, but he kind of jumped out. And the girls, you know how John Bon Jovi looks at early 20s.
Yeah.
They're like trying to rip his shirt off and everything. He gets back up on the stage. He goes, I told you you would try to take a piece of my heart. And I remember I told all my friends, he's going to be a big star. He just got that thing, right?
Yeah.
Then I went in the army, and in Germany, I saw Mama's Boys, with Gary Moore, Keel and Dio, Warlock and Judas Priest, Dokken and Accept, Metal Church and Metallica on their Master of Puppets tour. That was after Cliff had died. And then I went to a Monsters of Rock show there. Biggest concert I've ever been in my life. So this is in Germany. It was Warlock opening up on their second album. Then it was Bon Jovi a week after Slippery When Wet had just come out. So they hadn't hit it big yet. And then it was Michael Schenker Group, Def Leppard. Look in Hysteria. In Hysteria, there's a picture of a rain-soaked giant crowd. I'm in that crowd because
oh my god, that's so cool.
Yeah, it started raining. And the reason why they put it in the album is because the drummer had lost his arm, and a lot of record label executives were there to judge, do they still have it after Pyromania, because Hysteria was not released. It was taking like 3 years.
Yeah.
And Michael Schenker actually left the stage early because it started raining. And you almost had a riot. There was 100,000 people there. It was in a big field in Mannheim, Germany. I was like, what the hell? Michael Schenker leaves? He's actually German. And we were all pissed. And then when Joe Elliott came out, and I give Def Leppard a lot of credit, he goes, fuck the rain. And Def Leppard just like went to High and Dry and Let It Go.
Oh my god.
So no matter what people think of Def Leppard, they weren't pussies. They didn't care about the rain. They played. I give them a lot of credit.
The thing is, you're naming all the bands, and when we first started, we had like a complete cover set list, and we played almost all the bands you're saying. We had a song we were doing we actually used to play from Def Leppard, Wasted, Fastway, Say What You Will. And I loved Michael Schenker back then. I was totally into Michael Schenker.
I had played Michael Schenker some stuff for that. I don't even remember what songs now, but yeah, that whole thing. I mean, I think I don't know if you'd gone, Rena. We'd gone up to Orange County to see them. That was the first tour after he lost his arm. And it was just,
I was there. I remember, yeah.
That was just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, Def Leppard was just, they were incredible. They were huge.
Yeah.
And first came out, they were really young. They were like 16, 18 years old. So, wow. And Bon Jovi, oh my gosh, he was just being on the East Coast. He was everywhere. I think originally, wasn't he on one of the records from one of the radio stations? I think he had the one song.
Supposedly he got rejected by every major record label. Like he must have like submitted, I don't know how many times, over 50 or 100 times to labels, and nobody picked him up. Isn't that hilarious?
And I remember Richie Sambora, which some people may not be a big fan of Richie Sambora and Bon Jovi, but I didn't know who he was. He did. I saw Bon Jovi probably since then maybe 8 times. That first time he did something I've never seen any other band ever do. Before Bon Jovi even came out on the stage, Richie played like this 3 or 4 minute solo with nobody on stage.
That's
and I was
crazy.
like, these guys actually might be great.
Yeah, he's a great guitar player. He's definitely.
Let's talk about Roadkill album. album, your first release. How did that full album in 1988, how did that all come together? Where did you record it? Who did you do it with? And how long did it take?
Well, we were playing at Lemore's. We had played a bunch of shows there, and one of the DJs there, this guy Chuck K, invited us to play it, to submit a song to play on their album, and we got it. We got the place on that Lemore Rocks compilation album, and the label that put that out offered us a record deal, and we grabbed it. It was a pretty small record deal, and they actually hooked us up with Alex Perialas at Pyramid, and we had a week to do the album. We had to go up there, and we had to write an album because we didn't have an album material. We had more than a week to write the album, but we had a week to record when we were up there. Yeah, Lisa, add to it, because your memory is way better than mine these days.
At that time, to be able to, the record company say, okay, here, you're going to do a record. You're going to go to Pyramid Sound and work with Alex Perialas and Rob Wacko Hunter. And, they worked with Anthrax, and I believe they did Overkill. And he was just, the hot place to record at the time. And we got to do that. Spend a week recording an entire album. We were young. We really had no idea what we were doing. And we had a great time, and luckily came out with an album.
Wow. And then you filmed a video too, right?
Not back in the day, no. Any videos that we have, stuff would be...
The video you're probably thinking about, we did at a fair. It was like, remember they used to have the booths at the fair?
Roadkill.
Is that the one you're referring to?
I thought I saw one where you guys are all like singing together, like a chant, almost might have been the song Roadkill.
Yeah, it was Roadkill. We were at like, I don't, what county was that? Was it Orange County? Some county fair.
The Westchester County Fair. Yeah, it was like a video booth, and it was like $20. They had a green screen. Strings were missing. Half the cymbals were missing. I don't know if they were drumsticks. I think
if you look at there's no, like, the instruments aren't plugged into anything. We're just jumping around, having fun. That was hilarious.
I said to the guy, I go, well, I have a cassette. Can you play a song that we have rather than from your selection? And they're like, yeah, sure, whatever, not knowing it was us. I just happened to have a copy of the record in my pocketbook, not realizing everybody at the fair probably saw it because they had a big screen outside, and here we are.
At least you walked away with a video.
That's hilarious. We didn't know about the screen until after we left, though. We were like, what?
Awesome. Yeah. So for $20, and they played it at Lemoore. I'm sure there were probably other clubs that they played it at too.
So now that it's been like, quite a while since that album, obviously I know everybody starts somewhere, right? You've got to start somewhere. How do you look back on that album now? And I'm not trying to criticize it or be negative, but just like me, when I look back to my first films, I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I thought I did, but I didn't. So how do you guys look back on those now?
I think the music itself, the songwriting and the song arrangements and everything still hold up really well. But we had a different drummer on that album, and it doesn't feel like we feel. Like we always wish that we had Yael playing, but we had already recorded the album when we, got this gig with Anthrax, and Diane didn't want to play. She was overwhelmed that we were going to be playing such a big show and didn't think we were ready. But then Yael joined the band, so we never really had her on it. So as much as I like the songs on there, there's just a feel, it kind of doesn't feel like what we are now. It's not bad or anything, and I think Alex did a great job with production and all that for that time. To me, the drums just don't sound like what we sound like. Like, Yael's a really powerful, very hard-hitting, double bass drummer that plays metal. Diane was sort of jazz based. She was a great drummer, but she wasn't from metal roots or rock roots. It had a completely different feel with her. That's how I see it. Like, it's also when we picked up to do this tour last year, when we went on tour with John and opened for his solo tour, actually played a very large amount of material from the albums. Those songs are still, to be honest, when we were gonna do the reunion, I'm like, do we have to play those songs? I don't know how they're gonna go over now. But then when we got into it and started playing them again, I'm like, these songs are pretty good. They're holding up really well. Who knows? Maybe we did do a lot of recording of all of our live shows on that tour, but we never really reviewed anything. So maybe in the future we'll release something with Yael playing drums on it from there. What do you think of the album, Lise?
I think the majority of the songs definitely hold up today. I mean, any of the ones we played live with Yael playing on them, I think we could go in and record tomorrow and would sound great. And I think they're great live. The fact that it was so long ago and we'd never recorded and really hadn't written music, and the fact that the majority of the songs I think great and hold up, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And by the way, when I started as a director, Some people, a lot of my friends, when they watch this show, guys who've known me my whole life, they're like, every time I watch your show, I learn something about you I never knew. Guys I went to kindergarten with. The way I started out, which you guys might find curious, even though the directors might, was, filmmaking is very, very expensive. I mean, make a movie, it's insane. The way I got my start in the Army, when I was out of doing my job, in my free time, I would take songs, I call them amateur music videos. So I didn't have a band to film. I would listen to the lyrics and the music, and I would tell a story to that song. So the first one I ever did that I consider as my directing was actually a Pantera before they were famous. This was with their first singer back in like 85. And I did Lizzie Borden, I did Malice, I did Metallica. So I just take these like metal bands, Metal Church, and I would tell a story to them. So I kind of broke in making music videos as a filmmaker, but not with a band, just telling stories.
That's really interesting though. That's cool. I'd like to see some of those.
Yeah, I got to dig. Those are like in VHS way down in the basement.
Yeah.
I read that you guys opened up back then for Overkill, Manowar, Anthrax, Motorhead. Any interesting stories about any of those shows? Those are legendary bands. That must have been cool to do that.
It was so cool.
I mean, still to this day, it's like, wow, some of those shows, it's like, I can't even believe we did that. I know we did show with Overkill, I believe in Boston, and we had gone out to get food for dinner. And when we came back, the club accused us of graffitiing the band's name on the dressing room wall, trying to get money out of it. I remember being carried at the club by the members of Overkill being, it's okay. We're not going to fight with them. We already got the money. You guys are paid. Don't worry about it. Trying to take advantage of us. And that, I mean, when we played with Manowar twice, the Ritz and Lemoore in Brooklyn, and they were just very, very nice. I know at the Ritz, they let us have their dressing room because they weren't dressing rooms. It were just, everybody we played with was just really, really nice and very welcoming.
I remember playing with Motorhead and not being able to hear for a week after watching them. That was with earplugs.
Oh, jeez.
Didn't we do a show, something with Kiss at the Ritz? What was that? There was like it might have been after you were a little while and Marlene was playing bass, but some high school won like a concert with Kiss at the Ritz. I don't remember what it was exactly, but we weren't really hired to open for them, but we were able to go on early before they went on. So I always say we opened for them, but we opened for Kiss.
We opened for Poison, and then we weren't allowed in the dressing room area when we played with Poison.
They had to do their hair.
We opened up for the Ramones. I mean, it was a weird combination.
That was cool. That was so crazy.
How many years after Roadkill came out did you guys still play out live?
We were together for 9 years. And then we kind of just like sort of naturally, we didn't have like a breakup or breaking up now. We just started like the whole Seattle grunge movement came in and metal really wasn't that cool anymore. And like, it was sort of, things were dying down and we were having trouble getting interest and getting the support, and our label went bankrupt. So we didn't have the tour support or anything. And it just kind of like naturally we were, in our mid to late 20s, starting to think about having kids, and 3 of us got married, and, so it kind of naturally went in that direction for a while. That's pretty much, the only way I can explain it. Our drummer also like got really interested in other music, and she wanted to play other styles that, she was jamming with other people that were doing not so much hip hop, but like more soul oriented music and more grunge stuff. Like she was sort of exploring other styles. She kind of ended up like touring with another band, and we brought another girl in for a little while, but she didn't want to leave Queens. We had a show upstate somewhere, and we were driving home and the sun was coming up, and she kind of had a panic attack. She's like, I've never been out this late.
I've got to ask this before we get to you guys' EP and everything. Obviously, a lot of people are going to want to know, how did all 3 of you guys meet the guys from Dream Theater? Like, how did that happen? And then how did each lady get involved with, you don't have to get your private lives, but it's just an interesting story that 3 from one band would go with 3 from another band. How'd that happen?
I'll answer because when Lisa met up with John privately and started dating on her own with him, it wasn't part of like the group thing when we met, because she didn't come to California with us, but we went out to the Concrete Foundation's Metal Marathon to try to like, get our demo tapes out to people. And Yael was very good friends with Mike Portnoy. So Marlene and I thought that she wanted to hang out with Mike and do stuff with them. And so every time they would come walking up to talk to her or us, me and Marlene would be like, all right, we'll see you guys later. Come, we thought we were like under the impression that she wanted to go hang with her friends. And at some point they said, why do your friends keep walking away? Do they not like us? And I was like, they think you don't like them. I'm like, oh no, it's not that. We just, so they invited us to the Rainbow, and we all went to the Rainbow, and this is John will kill me for saying this, but his voice sounded like my first boyfriend, who I was really like. And I just like looked at him. I'm like, oh my god! It was like almost like love at first sight. But I didn't notice him until I heard him talk. Like, and he was across the table, and I was like suddenly interested in him. I guess it was mutual because by the end of we were going up to meet our manager up in San Francisco, W. Bono. But by the end of the Concrete Foundations thing, we kind of exchanged numbers. I asked him for guitar lessons and.
No, what year was this? So what Dream Theater album was around that time?
They only had, I remember when Yael brought their album into Zounds where we were rehearsing. Lisa, do you remember this?
That was it was the first record because Images and Words came out, once me and John started dating.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
With the original singer?
Yeah.
The Dream and Day Unite, yeah.
Yeah.
For me, and for all of us, Yael was friends with Mike. We were all hanging out on the weekends. Like I knew all of these guys before Rena and Marlene did.
Lisa was from Long Island, so she was part of their group. Like they hung out all the time. But Marlene and I were from upstate, and we didn't really.
And like we knew them. They were just part of the group that everybody hung out every weekend, and they were just musicians. They weren't like, oh my god, until we finally got to see them play, and then everybody was like, oh my god. And
well, the funny thing is, I thought you were going to remember this, but I don't know if you remember. Yael brought in this giant ghetto blaster with them on it, and she puts it in the middle of the floor in Zounds. We're supposed to start rehearsing, and she puts it on. It just sounds like chaos, like millions of notes, and like there's like headache music. And I'm like, can you turn that off? We have to have practice.
That's but by the way, I have to say this to you, and I'm saying this not because of your relationship with the band, but Dream Theater's been my favorite band since '92. You can see John, Joe on the G3 tour.
I did notice your G3 shirt.
Yeah. So what happened was I was living on Long Island in '88. I moved here. I didn't know about them when they released the first album. I didn't even know about them like for a couple years. And what happened was I went to a horror film convention in DC to meet Joe Dante, the director Gremlins, and I think John Landis was there from American Werewolf. So I'm down there, and this radio station plays this heavy rock, and I heard the beginning of Pull Me Under, and that guitar and Mike's drums. I actually said, what the hell's that?
Yeah.
And I'm listening to it, and that was my first time hearing it. After that, I went out and bought it, and I was hooked. So Dream Theater's been my favorite band since '92. I saw them at Mulcahy's for an acoustic show in Wantagh.
Yeah.
Now, you probably don't remember this, Rena, but I wrote for a guitar magazine called Guitar 2001 Magazine. It was around for about 6 years.
I recognize your name, like, for some reason, very strongly. So
I interviewed John for Guitar 2001 Magazine, and then when they did the Scenes from the Memory tour at Roseland in New York City, I went backstage and met you and John both.
Okay.
And then I think I saw you also at another concert as well. I think it was another place, but I also saw the band. I don't know if you were there at Jones Beach on a Systematic Chaos tour.
Mm-hmm. I was there.
Yeah, so I've been to the shows so much over the years because they're I remember I saw them at Malibu in Long Beach, and I think Voodoo Storm, a band I directed music video, opened up for them that was local.
So what do you think about Mike Portnoy being back in the band?
I'm going to be completely honest, as a Dream Theater favorite band fan, I really felt that when Mike was out of the band, I really felt there was a difference to the band. I know that John and James and all the, Jordan could all play great, but I felt there was something missing. Maybe it was the songwriting. Maybe it was, someone told me, well, Mike can play the fastest double bass. I said, I don't care about that. There's a certain quality that Mike brought that I think was missing. I'll be honest, I haven't seen him play since Mike was out.
Oh, really? Okay.
Not say something controversial, but like I 100% agree with you. I think Mike Mangini is a phenomenal drummer. He's as good as you could be, but there's just a feel that Mike Portnoy has that, it's like here and his groove. Like for me, John and Mike together, the way that the three of them, the two Johns and Mike, that unit, everything is like, it's so like strong, like to me, and obviously Jordan and everything too. But like, I feel like with the drums, like that pocket and the way it sounds to me, it just sounds a certain way that I always say to John, when I listen to Dream Theater, my blood pressure goes up a little bit and I feel like,
yeah. I'm not trying to insult Mike because I actually like what Mike did with James Labrie on his solo album. He did some good stuff. But Mike to me was a little more mechanical, almost like a machine.
Yeah.
And Mike just seems like it's more organic. I don't know if that's the right word, but if you go back to my Instagram or Facebook when Mike was announced back in the band a few months back, you'll actually see me say, you just made my day, my month, my year. I was so excited because I've been yearning for him to be back in the band. So That's my answer. I read that you guys reunited in the pandemic. I believe you correct me if I'm wrong. How did that all come about? Because obviously that's a long time, but thank God you did. And by the way, I was at the November 20th show in Patchogue Theater for the Performing Arts. I saw you guys open. It was my first time, I'm being honest, you can tell I'm a metal guy, my first time ever hearing you. I'd never had Roadkill. So that was I knew who you were. I'd met you a couple times backstage, but I'd never seen you as a musician. I saw the show by myself. It was my birthday, which was 4 days before that. And I said, I'm going to treat myself to go see John and Mike, their wives play. I actually caught COVID from that show, by the way. First time and only time. I caught COVID from that show.
All right, sorry about that.
So tell me about how did that all come back together? Because it was amazing.
We got together, we started talking during COVID, doing calls, discussed getting the band back together and doing a reunion. And just kind of, little by little. And all of a sudden, we had an offer to open for John's solo tour. And at first, Rena had mentioned something to me. I was at a Dream Theater concert, and I was like, yeah, right, whatever. And she's like, no, really, it's John's idea. And he turned around and said,
yeah, we had, before we had that tour offer, we had been getting together. I would go out to Pennsylvania. We just started relearning the songs, jamming a little bit. And I went out to, Yael has a studio out in California around the Yucca Valley area, Desert Dome Studio. She had her drum set up there, so I had some extra air miles, and I flew out there, and we just started playing. We're like, yeah, this is gonna work. This feels cool. We were working on new originals and working on some of the old stuff just to hash it out to see if it's something we could do. And she, from very early on, was like, I'm not gonna do this unless it's really good. I don't want to. She's been working for a long time as a professional, and she didn't want to do anything that was not going to come out and be really powerful. So it started like that. Again, Marlene and Lisa and I would get together and sort of just jam on things and work on some of the songs, but we didn't really have any official rehearsals till the summer. I thought it'd be a good idea to book a show just so we have something to work toward, and we'd have to get the set together. So I booked this show at this place in Brooklyn. This was right before we knew, or right around the same time, John had part of a Dream Theater tour. John had to postpone it till the spring. It was just a logistics thing with touring. So they were originally supposed to be booking in the fall, and then a couple of months opened up, and John just jumped in. He's like, I really want to try to do the solo tour. He's been trying to do it forever, and he had his album out that he did during the pandemic. He's like, I have just enough time. I could potentially, get in a bunch of dates here. And he's like, hey, do you guys want to open? I'm like, of course we want to open. Are you kidding me? So then we had to get serious. Because we weren't just playing at a club in Brooklyn now. We're playing on a big stage in front of very discerning fans. So we got together and did 2 sets of rehearsals. One earlier on in June, and then one a little later before the tour.
Were you playing a lot of guitar at that time, or did you step it up?
I never stopped. I was a Judas Priestess for 8 years before that, and right before the pandemic. And I was in a couple other local bands that I kind of always kept playing and kept just doing little shows because I was raising my kids. I really couldn't leave. And then with Judas Priestess, we toured a lot, West Coast and Canada and things like that. So I was sort of in shape for it. Yael had been out. She did have a knee injury at one point, so she had a rehab from that to be able to play the stuff. There's a lot of double bass in it, but she pulled it together. And I think mostly, Lisa can speak to you about her and Marlene, where they were at when we decided to do this.
Marlene and myself really hadn't played in just about 30 years. I tell people all the time, the only time I touched a bass was to pick it up and move it out of my way. It's just one of those things. It's like, you don't play for a while, and then it just kind of gets away from you. And, I still love music, and of course, always around it. That was a bit of a challenge, the two of us. But, once you start playing, it just takes time. It's like being an athlete. You can't run 5 or 10 miles. You have to, run a mile. You have to work up to it. It's all muscle strength and memory and relearning stuff. But as soon as you get it going a little bit, it's like, oh, okay, I can do this. You just have to keep doing it.
They picked it up pretty fast. I mean, they came in right out of the gate. We were playing this stuff going, wow, this sounds pretty good. The biggest thing was we had a lot of material to cover, and everybody had to learn it, and the singer had to remember all the lyrics, and not a lot of time.
As creative people, musicians, both of you. I'm a filmmaker, right? So filmmaking doesn't pay the bills. I wish it did, but it don't. So I have a regular job, and I actually have a second job, 2, sometimes 3 days a week. If I don't make movies, I really in some ways are not totally fulfilled. I'm not happy. I've got a wife, I've got a daughter. How do you guys feel as musicians? Do you feel the same where even if you weren't doing it for a long time, is there something kind of missing from inside that you need to kind of do it just for your own sake? Not so much for the fans, or how do you feel about that?
Definitely. for me, I played all along. Like even when I was pregnant, I was taking classical lessons from some guy up the street for a little bit. And I just always felt, akin to it. And my kids all play, so it's always around going on. So, I'm showing my daughter how to play like a song on the guitar and how to finger pick and, but not to the level of like where we'd be tour ready or ready for shows. But even doing the tribute band for me, like I love Judas Priest. So for me, it's like a dream. Even when I played with them a little while ago, they called me and they were doing a show in the city. They don't play out that much right now, but so I did a show with them and I had to just relearn the songs, but I played with them for 8 years, so they came right back to me. It's like even playing somebody else's music feels that for me. Like I don't even mind. Like it's just so great. What about you, Lisa?
Like I said, things get in the way. Once you get out of it, life takes over, kids, pets.
Her kids are a little younger than ours, so like she's still
enough now. But once I started playing again and we got it going, then it's like, okay, yes, this is something, that I did for years and couldn't live without. And now I'm back and now I'm to the point where I can't live without. So you get back into it, which was really a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and they say at one point the kids kind of leave and go to college and find jobs, and it's almost like you're back again, either alone or with your husband and wife, and then you kind of got to do your thing anyway, right? Because at some point, the kids will always be in your life, but they may not be at home. They might be gone, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just to link up to what you're talking about, my daughters are both actors, and they're one of them's interested in filmmaking as well. We just got them a black magic camera like Christmas last year, and the thing's sitting in a bag for a whole year now.
Oh,
but they take it out like 2 or 3 times, and don't really know how to use it, so because it's kind of complex. But they do that. So and my son and my daughter are both musicians. They're twins, so I'm talking about the same daughter that's an actor. She's also a singer and guitar player, and my son plays and sings, and so they have a duet called Mount Juliet. I'm going to give them a little plug in here. Mount Juliet. It's actually indie rock music. That's the polar opposite of what John and I do. And some people would say what I do is the polar opposite of what John does. They're really good. They're great songwriters. And what I'm saying is that like they leave and then they come back, and my kids, and I think Lisa's kids too, are very close to them and like very involved in their lives, and they're involved in our lives. That was my daughter FaceTiming me before when I was saying we're busy, right? She wouldn't take no for an answer. I was hanging up on her.
Blood Moon, by the way, I've already recorded my review of this to put on my YouTube show, but I wanted to put some pictures in. It's only 3 minutes. I wanted to keep it short and sweet, but I wanted to put pictures in. Marlene just sent me some pictures, I think yesterday, but I was at my second job. So probably tomorrow night, because I'm actually I'm auditioning actors for my next movie, which I'm going to shoot June, July this year. It's been almost 2 years since my last shoot. I'm going to do a really nasty, scary horror film. I had one that come out about 5 years ago. We made it about 5 years ago, but it won Best Horror Film. It's all over the world. It's called Devil's Five. And then I had a suspense thriller, a Hitchcockian suspense thriller called Double Vision, which won Best Thriller. You can see it up there. Best Thriller, Top Audience Award. And so now I wanted to go back and do a horror film. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I just got that yearning, like, we're going to film in June, July. So I'm like, tomorrow night, the next night, Friday night, I have actors each night I'm auditioning. Then I got a location scout, etc. It's a lot of fun. When I saw you guys play live in November 20th to 22, was it recorded already, or did you guys just practice it and record it after that, the tour?
No, you're 100% right. We were attempting to have a CD for sale on the tour, and so we kind of started recording, but being pieced together because Yael was out in California, Bettina's from New Mexico. Yael did the drums, then she sent him here. I put some scratch tracks down, sent him back. She recorded the vocals there. Lisa came here and did some bass here, and you did some in Pennsylvania with another guy, Thomas, right? Thomas Kuche. And Marlene did some guitar there and some guitar here. We went into the headquarters of Dream Theater and did a couple of tracks of guitar and bass with. Did you do bass there?
No.
You were there, but me and Marlene did some tracks for 2 of the songs with Jimmy T. Then I came home, I did my own solos on my computer with Logic, and I think I used John's Neural plugin for something, but I have to go back and look at what I did. I have to reopen those files because I forgot how I recorded it. I had so many things going on. We were doing it so many different ways, and like it's really kind of cool. After getting it done, we couldn't get it done in time. We couldn't get it done and mixed, and Jimmy T was going to try to mix it on the road, but it was a whirlwind of a tour. We were playing 5 nights on, 1 day off. There was just no time to do anything, so we missed the deadline on that. And so that's why it's coming out now, because we got back and we're able to finish it up and mix it and master it and finishing touches, artwork and all that.
So who produced it? Were you guys produced, or and who
Produced it, yeah.
engineered it?
I engineered it. Was a mix of different things. Jimmy T did a lot of stuff to help it along, because he's taking in files from everywhere and everybody's different sounds and everything. He really did a lot of polishing on it. So I would definitely call him an engineer, engineered by Jimmy T. Jimmy T. Meslin. And he's amazing. Like, he's got such instinct for stuff. And he also helped us with different things along, just getting the files to different places. And he turned us on to Mayor, who mastered it. Elle actually knew prior to that because he's from LA, but he had used him and said he was wonderful. And Jimmy T mixed it. I think I love the way it sounds. I think it sounds great.
I think it's astonishing and again, it's not to knock Roadkill, but when you listen to the sound, even the sounds of the drums, like the different heaviness, the different guitar, like the soft guitar, then the heavy guitar, the vocals, I think all of you guys sound better at what you individually do. And then as a group, I think you hear it better. It's more dynamic. I mean, maybe it's also technology, but it does sound a lot better. And I think also the way you composed it, there's room between the instruments where it's not kind of on top of each other. I guess that's maybe just maturity. You guys could maybe speak better about that. But I was very impressed by it. I loved it.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is maturity is part of it. It's also more modern of today. We're all using different equipment. That makes a big difference. Everything's digital. The combination of all of those things all together, and the people who worked with us on it all together, just makes the sound the way it is, really.
I think that sometimes heavy metal bands don't understand that you don't have to always be going a million miles. You could slow down. When it hits harder. Because I've always, like some of the speed metal guitars, which I like,
yeah.
if they're always playing fast, then when they try to play fast, you can't tell they're playing fast because they're always playing fast, right?
Right, so you want the dynamic, yeah.
There's got to be that give and take, right?
Right.
Just like a film, I can't be doing gore and blood and stuff all the time. You got to ease up,
yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
No, I hear that it wouldn't have any impact. Something you said earlier, like, to me, and I always say this to people, like, when I'm playing a part or whatever, I feel like you take, like, Black Sabbath, like, to me, they're, like, the heaviest band ever, like, but they're playing, like, a part that's slow and dragging it, and it sounds so crazy heavy to me, like that element in the music, along with the faster stuff, or going back and forth, like, to me, that's kind of like, I mean, you can hear that in the Iron Maiden influence, or even Judas Priest does that a bit. I always love the drag that Black Sabbath has, and it's something like I try to like the other girls to do with me, because everybody, how when you're playing an instrument, you have the beat, it's here. Some people, usually in rock and metal, people tend to play a little ahead of the beat. The pocket could be there, but it's sort of like pushing. And in some parts, like for me, I like to pull it back behind it just ever so much to make it feel like it's pulling. And like that's Black Sabbath thing, like totally. Like, so all that stuff is in there. But I do like the really fast stuff, and not to say we're not going to continue to like write thrash. We do plan to write and record new material in the very near future, getting together to try to work on that. The hardest thing is that everybody's all over the place, so we have to put the time aside and slate it out and get them here or there. We have to go there.
Did you guys have any specific goals, Martens, on the EP, like the type of songs you wanted to do this time versus the Roadkill instrumental composition or lyrical content? Was there any kind of a focus like that when you guys did this one?
Basically, these were songs that we had written. Out of stuff that we've done, I guess collectively we all hope that the 4 songs went together, and they were really what represents us the best, because it's a little heavy, it's a little melodic, there's a combination, almost, like Rena was saying, with the drag, here and there, Black Sabbath feel. So you get a little bit of everything, and all together the songs really work. They were songs that we had, like they really need to be done today, properly, re-recorded and released. Luckily, everything came out really great.
Well, my last question is, what's next for Meanstreak? Like, what's your goal? A full album, touring? Like, what's your guys' future look like right now?
Full album and touring.
Yeah.
Just to be completely transparent, we did approach a couple of record labels, like 2 record labels with this, and they were interested. They were like, it's different now because you have to have like a huge social media presence, and they want to see numbers and they want to see videos, and we really didn't have the materials or we were just putting our social medias up there. And you know how hard it is to get people to follow. I mean, a lot of people come on and like a post, and but just to get your numbers up to where they want them is really difficult. Like, we just decided, you know what, we don't have a presence out there. Let's just release this thing. We recorded it with the intention of selling it on tour just ourselves. You know, we have it, it's done. You know, let's get it out there and get everybody to hear it and hear what we're doing now, and then we can take it from there. I think what we're looking for now is some representation. We definitely need a booking agent at this point. We're talking to a few different people right now. You know, I'm not sure if we're going to do the recording thing again on our own, which is something we can do because we have the people and we have the engineers and we have the mixers and all of that. Do we have the money? I don't know. I don't think we have the money. It would be nice also to get support from a label. So look into that also and see if, you know, now that the thing's out and they can see that you know, people seem to like it. I think it's going to do pretty well.
Thank you guys again. It's been great.
Good luck with your movie.
What's that?
Good luck with your movie.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. If you ever want to see it when it comes out, I'll try to, you know, forever premiere, whatever you guys can come out.
That would be so cool.
Yeah, I'm a local guy. Spot on.
I know. We're local girls.
Okay, thank you, Martens. Thank you, Rena.
Thank you.
Okay. Take care, Terry. Thank you so much.
Okay, have a good night.
From his cage, bear witness to the truth. No need to be afraid.